right, everybody, we are back with another Ramp Careers daily update. I'm here with both co-founders today, Mitch and Manoj. Guys, how you doing? It's Friday.
Doing good, Danny. Super excited for the weekend. It's been a long week.
Oh man, it's been a week. It's been a week over here too. So I'm glad it's running to the end. So we got a good topic today. A fun one. We're talking about email subject lines. Some of the best ones we've seen, some of the worst ones we've seen, some strategies, tips, and tricks on how to make your subject lines pop and get those email opens. Mitch, I know you've had a ton of experience sending emails, blasting stuff out through Outreach and other email software. Let's get your 10,000-foot view on subject lines and what makes them great, what makes them not so great.
My opinion here is keep it short, sweet, and simple. The subject line isn't meant to sell your idea, your product, your service. It's simply to get the prospect to open your email. There's some folks out there that I've worked with that write amazing subject lines. They're kind of like wizards at it. There's some folks that definitely fall on the other end of the spectrum. I like to keep it short and sweet. I'm not trying to wow the prospect with my subject line. I'm trying to, if anything, fly under the radar, get them to just instinctively hit open. And if they forget the subject line immediately, that's fine. That's a win for me. As long as they open the email, I'm going to grab them in the hook and the body of the email and the close of the email. So that's kind of my 10,000-foot view.
Nice. Manoj, what do you think about subject lines? What's your high level?
You got to nail it. The high level is that it needs to be interesting enough so someone will click it, and that's super important because if you don't pass that barrier, people might just click it and delete it, or just worse, mark it as spam. Right? You don't want that to happen. What I've also heard is that Google and other mail servers typically look for patterns within subject lines, not just the content of the message, and typically that also serves as a risk for you. So I think it's something that you absolutely have to get right because it's almost like a gateway for the rest of the message. So it's important for sure.
Yeah. One thing I'll add here is when I think of subject lines, I don't actually care what the subject line is. I let the data speak and I just listen in. So if a subject line works or if it doesn't work, I don't really care. I want it to hit a certain threshold. If it's above 45% open rate, I'll run with it and I'll use it over and over and over again until it doesn't work anymore. If it's below, I know that I put a bad subject line out into the wild and I will quickly iterate and reassess. I think the best part about subject lines and subject line testing is that you get such a rapid feedback loop. So we send an email blast, you get the open rate right away, and you can see within a day or two what the total open rate is for the campaign. So you get that piece of data that will just feed back into how you think through subject lines going forward.
Danny, do you have like a certain feel or framework that you use for subject lines? Like when you sit down to write a cold email from scratch, what type of message are you trying to put out there to the sender when they read your subject line, or what's your framework for developing a subject line from scratch?
Yeah, so when I look at subject lines, I think of a few things. So the first thing I think about is what is a good entry to the rest of the email? What kind of flows naturally? If I'm telling a story with the email, what kind of flows? The second thing is I want it to be catchy, but I don't want it to be misleading because I've gotten subject lines that work extremely well, like near 100% for email open rates, but they're so vague. They mislead the audience to a point where you'd get them to read the email and they're then sending hostile responses back. So I want it to be simple, maybe a little bit catchy, but not so vague that it's misleading. And the last thing is whenever I send or whenever I test subject lines, I test two at minimum at one time. So I'm always comparing two subject lines to each other at a minimum. And I'll hold those constant, I'll test those and I'll hold the body of the email constant.
Right. So it sounds like you're trying to invoke some sort of curiosity from the prospect, just enough so that they open that email and start reading those first couple lines.
Yeah. Yep. So we've all seen a ton of email subject lines come through. Let's start with some of the worst. What are some of the worst types of email subject lines that you've received or you've experimented with, to give our fans a taste of what they probably shouldn't do?
Do you want to start, Mitch? I've seen some tricky ones, but I know that you've personally been by a few.
Yeah, I think just generically, the ones that I immediately swipe and delete on my phone, which is where I read most of my email, are the ones just look like a marketing generic email, right? So I think there's so much subconsciously that happens as you scroll through your phone, scroll through your email, scroll through your inbox, to decide whether you want to open or delete. That simple formatting tricks can make your email look a lot more desirable, or can spark the curiosity of the reader a lot more. And for me, that's simply, avoiding emails in all caps, obviously, avoiding excessive punctuation or any punctuation. I don't know if I've ever used punctuation in an email subject line before. Maybe a question mark if it's like the most provoking question ever. But I think the ones that get me are the ones that are just super, they just scream marketing generic emails. I like to go under the radar with, making it look like it's just, one buddy sending an email to another person. What tricky ones have you seen, Manoj?
Well, I mean, I don't, and maybe this is just a function of me having read enough research reports on what are good subject lines, what are not good subject lines. I might be in the minority here, but when I see appropriate contact, I just immediately don't want to read that email. I'm like, yeah, it's just like, I don't want to go there. And I almost feel like the body of the email inevitably will have, if you're not the right contact, who should I be talking to? Then my instinct is, do you want to give me your commission? Because like, what do you want me to do? You want me to do your job? I'm already ticked off. So I don't know. I might be in the minority here. So I don't like those. The other category of subject lines that I don't like are the ones that make it seem like they were introduced to me or referred to me by someone else, when in reality, it's not a referral whatsoever. I've seen that trick happen a couple of times where it says introduction from person, and then the body of the email will say, I've been in touch with X, Y, and Z. And what the SDR means by I've been in touch with someone else is that they've also been on my cold email list, right? And so I don't know, man. I mean, that's
Definitely guilty of that one.
Listen, I think those are, maybe I'm nitpicking here, but those types of emails are, I don't want to be bait and switch. Sometimes I'll smile and I'm like, you got me, and I'll respond. But generally, you don't want to have a sour feeling in your mouth. I also don't like subject lines that are super long. The ones that will run off across the page and you'll have to almost click the email to read the entire subject line. Not a fan of those. The other problem that I have, and I'm seeing this happen recently, is emojis and subject line. I'm okay with it because I'm used to seeing all the marketing emails for every, service that I use. Let's call it Expedia, a travel website. They all use emojis, like sunshine emoji and drink emojis and all that stuff. But the problem is that it's okay, but then I can't tell if it's B2B or B2C. And that's another tricky thing, right? So those off the top of my head are things that I take issue with. But, otherwise, I think generally, if you use subject lines that are not deceitful, it should do the job.
Danny, any bad ones that stick out to you, or should we switch to what works well or what we like to receive?
So I'll add one to that, and that's where I receive an email that is just so blatantly a marketing or a sales email. Like, I haven't signed up for a product email newsletter, and I'm getting an email from somebody that says something like blank company lifts X value by 300%. Like, that to me just screams sales email, and I'm just going to delete it. Just like right off the bat. So when it's just super spammy sounding, and there's clearly no effort put into the subject line, I just assume at that point there's no real effort put into the body of the email as well, and it's gone from my brain before I even know it. Deleted, marked as spam potentially.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you like to receive? What makes you open?
So the ones that I like to receive, something personalized or something that can resonate with me right off the bat. So obviously, I work within the sales arena. Obviously, I work within the sales arena in tech. So if it's something related to tech, something related to sales, something even as personal as related to, where I come from. So generally, if they put into the subject line something about the University of Michigan, that shows to me that they went like a little bit above and beyond and looked into my personal background and found a way to break through the noise. So I like those. Anything that has to do with something of value, I will find generally interesting. So if it is a genuine connection to somebody that I would be potentially interested in, and it says as much, so like connecting with the CEO of X company, connecting with the co-founder of X company, I like those. I think those are great. Those are hard to replicate. For me going outbound though, the ones that I do see work quite often, honestly, my highest subject line is something like, my name X, or bracket the name of somebody else. So like some sort of connection type of email, and then a couple slashes, and we'll put this format in the comment section, but a couple slashes and the company name. So it's hyper personalized. It's nothing fancy, but it's just, I'm trying to connect with you. Here's my company. Here's your company. Here's our names together. Something that just kind of pops a little bit. How about you guys? What have you seen work?
I mean, yeah, you nailed it. The last one you mentioned there, that consistently works for me, right? 50 plus, 60+% open rates is simply, my name connecting with their name, or my company, intro to your company, using the company names in both of those. And I think if you write that well, sometimes I'll just go no caps on it, make it look like almost like an internal email. I think subconsciously that gets opens. It's generic, but again, it flies under the radar. It doesn't get the immediate delete. They might be interested enough to open, and that's all you need. All you need is one open, and then you got to provide value immediately in those first couple of sentences. If you do that, you're golden.
Question for you guys: what about no subject line?
I think that it's like a gimmick. I think it can work. Like I'll open something with no subject line, but I think you run the risk of looking like actual spam, right? Like like an actual virus or something attacking your computer. So I bet people just automatically delete it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've read some studies, or some tips that say one of your try that A/B tested with no subject line. Apparently that'll give you a decent open rate. But for a completely cold email, I'm with you guys. Anything that just connects two different people or connects a company name, that generally seems to be okay. I'm not really sure about subject lines that have excessive information about the product, or it just has a lot of jargon. I don't think that works, but we'll see. I mean, I'm curious to see how the world of subject lines changes. I almost feel like there's going to be one that works, and then someone will post it, like Gong will make an article on it, and then every SDR worth their salt will copy it, and the next thing you know, as a buyer, you're like, okay, right. This seems to be the new thing. And then somebody else will try something else. It's like a constant cat and mouse game.
Oh yeah, you got to be super on point, and that's why the recommendation at the beginning is just, you got to test, and really listen to what the data is telling you. You can't sit on your you can't rest on your laurels and think I found this perfect subject line that works, because 3 weeks later it's not going to work anymore. There's so many people trying so many emails right now. I remember back in my thanks days as a loyalty program marketing automation company, and we had this email series that would go out that would work really well, and it was like 3 successive emails. One was just the subject line yesterday, the second one was today, and the third one was tomorrow. And the emails just, I don't know why, but they just worked so well. And that was probably 2014 2015 timeline. And I think if I sent those today, they'd just get marked as spam and sent away, banished, because they're particularly vague.
I love that. I worked at a collections company that sold collection software, and we would just send the emails. I was like, your overdue invoice, and then like it would always get opened.
No, that's getting it open for sure.
And they'd be like, do I owe you money? What invoice? And it was terrible. It always backfired, because you get like these collection agents or like these finance people like yelling at you, and it was terrible. That didn't work.
Funny. But interesting discussion, guys. I think we can wrap up today on that note.
Yeah, we'll put some of the learnings in the comments too, because we covered a lot. But this has been another Ramp Careers Daily Update for Mitch and Manoj, signing off. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.